Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. So.
I'm tempted to ask if you've gotten petrol this morning. But it's a beautiful morning nonetheless. I'm Kyari.
Good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily.
You're really tempted to ask.
I like you. I'm not asked already.
You know, there's something, it's not out of place because, I mean, moving through different areas. Because we've had several assurances from the authorities about what was going to happen. Not just that of yesterday. Before yesterday, they said, in fact, not even...
You can almost tell the kind of
almost
response
every time, yes. You say, look, don't panic. That's the phrase.
Fuel.
Don't panic. We'll have enough. If it's during the festive season, we'll have enough to go around for this festive season. There is no need for panic buying. No need for holding on products. Well, if it's during the Saga, you know the same message comes through. Well, yesterday we had the same message come through. Now they were a little specific in terms of how many. Is it 1 billion liters now that they've got?
Over the next few weeks.
And don't panic buy. Just how do they comply with that on the street?
It's something different entirely. And
and at the end of the day, it's the experience of the Nigerian that says it. I mean, that says it all. At the end of the day, that's what counts.
How come we never seem to have a hang on some of these things? You thought that
you should have
once, twice, thrice. We should sort it out.
You should have seen the roads yesterday in the late afternoon into the night. They especially the Lagos Ibadan Expressway
station.
They literally blocked the roads. Of course, you know, one of our guests couldn't get to the studio yesterday because the roads were blocked. So, and it's all as a result of people trying to get fuel and everything.
And that's why it's not too far away from what the dailies are reflecting today. So we'll just jump right into that and follow through with that conversation. So guys, let's switch and take a look at what the dailies are saying. The Guardian, they lead with that story as well. Concerns everywhere concerning fuel. So there you go. The front page, the big lead on the front page of the Guardian here today. Harder times loom as fuel crisis lingers. Look at the riders. Inflation decelerates slightly to 15.6%. Data is mockery of market's reality. Oh dear. That's a dangerous one when you begin to say data is a mockery. Don't want to...
because data is meant to be data, right? It's meant to be just clear.
It's supposed to be what exactly it is. But if you begin to make this kind of commentary, then, we already have a challenge with you. We all highlighted some time ago about the impression, media messages, the kind of impact it's having on people. And don't go thinking that all of those messages don't have that much impact. I mean, people will react to them whichever way they deem fit. And
don't forget, it's like you're speeding at, say, 120 kilometers per hour. This figure is essentially, say, you just decelerated by maybe 15.
So what some are actually saying is it's showing on your odometer that you're decelerating, but in reality, the car that is moving is you get the point now.
There you go. And look at the other one, food crisis not reflecting government investment in agri, says Farmer Association. Okay, I wonder what the perspective is on this. And then you see NNPC imports 2.3 billion liters as queues persists nationwide. So I guess there'll definitely be people will look to see, looking to get some explanation concerning that particular rider. That's the Guardian this morning.
Well, the Daily Trust is no different, really, with the big story. Motorists groan as petrol sells 600 naira per litre in Abuja. And some even say 700 naira or even more. Price doubled in Kano. Lagos.
Isn't that supposed to be a crime? If you sell above a particular limit?
And they actually... oh, goodness.
I don't get it.
You see more riders, passengers...
Should that be allowed to happen?
Definitely not, but clearly it is happening. Passengers stranded, transport fares rise by 150%. Scarcity may affect inflation, MBS, there you go. 1 billion litres in stock, 2.3 billion on the way, NNPC. It's a page 5 read, and the pictures on the front page just explain what a lot of Nigerians have to go through. By the way, it's still ongoing, I should say. So, major challenge. But rather than the big pictures you see on the front page, you see Buhari to Nas. remove your 887 billion naira project from 2022 budget. Yeah, it's at page 24 read. You know, the president had, you know, sort of, they tried to manage that and said, no, the president didn't criticize the National Assembly, he didn't complain about it, but clearly he was not happy with those things. So he's made it official now.
I'd like to see how they respond to that.
Absolutely. Especially because the Senate president was actually reading that letter, essentially saying, you know, you need to...
After all, he said he will always support the executive bills.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have to keep fighting all the time. So how will they treat this request?
Very interesting. And, you know, the president gave some revelations in that particular letter.
Which you can, by the way, check a look at on channelstv.com.
Absolutely. We have a full version of it, so you can go through it and see for yourself what's going on. So a couple of other stories on the front page. NDLEA grills Abba, Kyari, others, and drug dealing. That's the Daily Trust.
Nigerian News Direct takes a different angle to that same fuel story. FG proposes 2.5 trillion naira supplementary budget for fuel subsidy. Another twist, right? As scarcity persists in Ogun, Lagos, Abuja, does that mean that we don't have scarcity in other places? PMS now selling at 700 naira black market in FCT.
Wow.
That's what you have there. NNPC distributes 1 billion liters of fuel amid scarcity of products. Stories on page 2 of the paper.
You know, they removed subsidy from that one and then added what again? It's for 700.
That's the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Good morning, Malkwe.
Good morning, gentlemen. For a moment, I almost thought that the fuel scarcity had gotten into our transmission, but hey, here we are. And New Telegraph is the paper I'll be looking at for you this morning. It has this on the front page. NBS to Nigerians. Expect economic shocks in March. As if the shocks we have now are not enough. But hey, this is precisely what the NBS is saying this morning. Says current fuel scarcity wasn't poverty level. January inflation fell to 15.5%. Uncleared cargoes, contaminated fuel cleanup may prolong PMS scarcity. Chaos as long queues persist in Lagos, Abuja. Stations hike pump price to 205 naira. NNPC, we're expecting 2.3 billion liters of fuel soon. So those are the riders beneath that story. MBS to Nigerians expect economic shocks in March. The front page of New Telegraph. You also have a few other stories here. Twitter resurgence boosts economy by 66.4 billion naira. There's an amount Nigeria lost to the suspension. Nigeria lost 546.5 billion naira to suspension. That's also captured on the front page for you. Since 1960, Indigbo has been canvassing for right to nation's leadership. That's from Ohaneze. Nigeria should choose president of Igbo extraction or self-determination. And they also have that story on the budget. Budget 2022, federal government 6 amendments, earmarks 2.557 trillion naira for fuel subsidy. Wants 139 capital projects worth 13.24 billion naira deleted. Budget deficit hits 7.40 trillion naira. Oh, that's how much we need to find debt to continue to service. Well, page 6 will give you all of the details on the front page of New Telegraph this morning. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Nigerian Tribune is next. They focus on a different matter. Kyari Gate, they call it. And look at that. Police and the NDLEA may clash over indicted officials. Agency won't probe allegations. It's red herring, says NDLEA. Investigators grill Kyari, others. IGP's IRT, SRS satellite units not disbanded investigations. So that news had gone out at the time, talking about how that instruction had come through, but there were, after several checks, it turned out that certain offices said, nope, that is not the case. That's the Tribune today.
Take a look at Vanguard newspaper next. Drug deal, that's how the Vanguard captures it this morning. How Marwa IGP agreed on Kyari's arrest, so giving some inside details of the scenes, and a couple of riders really. Fear groups police suspect inside NDLEA cell as Abba Kyari rejects food. Kyari's action, height of indiscipline, retired CP. And you see fish out ex-IGPs as senior officers, politicians behind Kyari's excesses. Retired AIG charges police and NDLEA. And that goes on and on. And the picture on the front page, different story. See some of the 11 billion naira properties seized from top military officer. They look quite, lush. And there's a bad petrol story on the front page as well. But this very shocking one. We sold my wife's friend's head for 70,000 naira. Ogun couple arrested with human parts. That's just bizarre. Entirely. Let's leave it for Vanguard.
Come on now, Mr. and Mrs. What did we do to you?
Well, let me see. Okay. For the love of Mr. and Mrs. this morning, I don't want to get in trouble. You see, Mr. telling Mrs., come on, dear, give me a smile. I have a soft spot for you. I see Mrs. saying, I don't think so. The spot where you keep your money is not soft. Coming 2 days after Valentine's, I'm sure she knows well enough. Let's leave it there for Vanguard.
And the leadership newspaper very quickly. Fuel scarcity bites harder amid NNPC's assurance of 1 billion litres. The story is on page 4. And several other stories you find. Citing irregularities, PMB seeks amendments to 2022 budget. How is that going to go? I guess we await the executive legislature conversation on that. That's the leadership newspaper today.
Yeah, that wraps it up with a look at some of the dailies here today. Don't go away. We're back in a moment. Stay with us.
Is this really happening? Or there's a mix-up somewhere? Is perhaps the contemplation by some, and maybe a sit back and watch what this whole story of Abba Kyari being linked to a cocaine deal is all about. Well, whichever side of the coin it is for you, certain facts are currently incontrovertible. A once well-decorated police officer, branded in some quarters as a super cop, honored at several fora and many more for what he has come to be known for as that one police officer who has solved the puzzle of intriguing and difficult crimes, mostly around kidnapping and murder, has been arrested and in the custody of another anti-crime agency. We are talking about Deputy Commissioner of Police Abba Kyari. From the time he got enlisted into the Nigerian police force and got posted to Adamawa, later to Lagos, and up until joining the IGP Intelligence Response Team, IRT, it was an upward trajectory for him, almost a 22-year stainless service. Abba's troubles started in the last few months when the Federal Bureau of Investigation indicted him following allegations that he facilitated payments to Nigerian police personnel from Instagram celebrity Ramon Abbas, also known as Hush Puppy, which eventually led to his suspension from the Nigerian police and from his position as the head of Intelligence Response Team by the Police Service Commission in August 2021. For the rest of the year 2021 and January 2022, it did appear like nothing was going to happen as regards the extradition request to the US, and not much was heard or seen as an outcome of the investigation by a government institution.
With intelligence at our disposal, the agency believes strongly that DCP Kyari is a member of a drug cartel that operates the Brazil-Ethiopia-Nigeria illicit drug pipeline.
Many didn't see yesterday's event coming. First, the Nigeria Drug Law Enforcement Agency declared him wanted for attempting to siphon part of a cocaine haul, and just hours after that, he was arrested along with 4 other officers, Sunday Ubua, Bawa James, Simon Agriba, and John Nuhu.
NDLEA has no option but to declare DCP Abba Kyari of the Nigerian police wanted right from this very moment. I must say this publicly, we are not unaware of threats to the lives of NDLEA officers involved in this investigation, even as we continue to do our best to protect our officers and men in the line of duty.
Before his current travels, Abba Kyari was a well-decorated cop. He had busted more than 80 criminal gangs and kidnappers, including the arrest of Nigeria's most notorious kidnap kingpin, Chukwudumeme Onwamadike, also known as Evans, in Lagos. He also led the arrest of Ishaq Khalid, a 30-year-old, and 13 members of his deadly Ansaru terrorist group responsible for several kidnappings, arrest of the kidnappers of elder statesman Chief Olufalaye in Ondo State, and so many others. So what really happened? For now, his competencies are not in doubt. What is on trial is his character. The outcomes in the days ahead will definitely be an open book. Will competency match character? Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
Yeah, so Mr. Bonlo Adegburuwa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joins us next to weigh in on this matter. Good morning and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, thank you.
Well. This whole thing just gets more interesting as the days progress. But when this news broke, there were several questions as to what's going on, how will this end, the laws, of course. But first, this officer was supposed to be under suspension. And then when this occurred, many wondered, okay, how is this going to play out between the NDLEA and the police in terms of that cooperation, the positions of the law, which are some of the things we look at now. But your immediate thoughts on his arrest so far by the NDLEA, what would that be?
Well, I think like many other followers of this event is to say that one is stupefied, one is shocked. It's quite murky because it splashes mud on the entire system. The image of Nigeria in the international community, the policing system, and indeed the lack of capacity or semi-capacity by the government of the day in dealing with issues quickly and timelessly in such a way that you're able to nip them in the bud without escalating. Because if you recall the events leading to this whole episode, is that there was a request for extradition by the United States of America. And the Inspector General of Police, with all due respect, was full dragging, and treating the thing with kid gloves. He claimed suspension. Indeed, there was a team that was set up to probe, which came out with a report that suggests some kind of mild infraction. And so it was a drama between the Inspector General of Police and the Police Service Commission. You recall that the Police Service Commission rejected the report and insisted that he had to be reprobed. So if we had trusted the judgment of the IGP on Abba Kyari, we probably would have exonerated him and not extradited him as requested by the US. And then you recall the way the Attorney General himself had not acted swiftly in line with the request from the United States of America. But for the event that happened on Monday through the NDLEA, I'm sure one day we'll just wake up and see that Mr. Kyari will have been reabsorbed into the Nigerian police force.
You think that will happen?
I think that was where, with all due respect, the Inspector General of Police was working towards. Because if you look at the events, it would seem that the Super Cop was in the good books of those in power. Otherwise, if you are suspended effectively from an organization and somebody else is being appointed to replace you. I think ACP Tunji Disu also. Yeah. How do you have the capacity and the authority to still mobilize serving officers of the same unit that he called his boys, mobilize them to go as far as Enugu, to go as, why he's on suspension, so, which means he was actually in charge of that agency, even on the alleged suspension, because that's what has happened in this case, that he was still able to exercise reasonable control over people who are supposed to be in power. So, and that speaks to our system, because, we need to be careful in order not to demoralize other officers who are still working in several agencies and are doing their best patriotically to be able to nip crime in the bud. And also, on the other hand, we also shouldn't give the impression that we're trying to nip the events under the carpet, as it were. So we have to strike a balance between the decisions that we take in respect of the Kyari matter.
And that's where, when you say that it casts a lot of shadow and questions as to the entire system, one wonders, will this arrest have happened if the NDLEA and the police didn't have some sort of cooperation? Because if he was still really in the good books of certain people, will this arrest have happened?
Chamberlain, because of the reputation of the government we are dealing with, and I talk about reputation advisedly, in terms of lack of trust, a lot of theories abound now that this whole episode may just be a small screen to avoid extradition. That's a theory that is on the table. Because under the Extradition Act, if there's a request for somebody to be tried in another country and you want to avoid that, all you need to do is to charge the person to court in your local jurisdiction for him to face trial, maybe for a mild offense.
So there is such a law indeed?
Oh yeah, the Extradition Act is in existence, and it says clearly that once the person who is subject of the request for extradition is facing trial in the local jurisdiction, you cannot. He has to go through that process. So if Abba Kyari is charged to court by NDLA or the Nigeria police, that's the end of the extradition for now.
So that's
why there is that conspiracy theory.
Let's imagine that that plays out. Who in all of these now might be playing that card deliberately or not?
Well, honestly, if you look at the history of this government, I'm talking about the government of President Muhammad Buhari, is to say that you can't put anything past this particular regime in terms of experience. Because, recall the agencies that we have dealt with in the course of this regime. Let's go to AFCC. As you sit here, we don't know the status of Mr. Ibrahim Magu, whether he's still in the agency, whether he's suspended, whether he's been exonerated. So you have a regime that is lackadaisical, that sits on critical issues without taking a decision and hold Nigerians to ransom, and everybody begins to guess or to wait for the body language of those who are in power. So that's why I think that a lot is possible, that this may just be an attempt to avoid the eventual extradition
right now
by the United States.
Right now, sir, there are two agencies at the forefront, the NDLEA and the police. Which of them do you think, if they build a case against this gentleman as we speak now, will forestall that extradition request?
Well, if the story we have seen is correct, that Mr. Kyari is part of a cartel, a drug cartel, between Nigeria, Ethiopia, Brazil, and he's been caught red-handed as shown in the video, surely he has to go through trial. And that process is that he has to be disengaged from the Nigeria police first.
Not suspended?
No, if there is such weighty allegation, he has to go through the room trial within the police system. That's what the law requires. He'll go through the police disciplinary process first, because you have to derobe him as a serving officer. The same with all the military agencies. And you also recall the case of Ngajiwa and Federal Republic of Nigeria, where a serving judge was alleged to be involved in corruption. And the Court of Appeal said, look, so long as he's still a serving judicial officer, you need to go through the National Judicial Council and derobe him first, and then he come and face trial. It's the same thing with he has to go through orderly room trial. He'll be dismissed from the force, and then you hand him over to the NDLEA as an ordinary Nigerian.
But he's with the NDLEA now, according to NDLEA.
There has to be some collaboration. He can do the trial. It's not a hard and fast room. The orderly room trial can
When
go.
you say temporary, that they will not be able to extradite him, does that mean that if he goes through all this process and he does his time on the law, he still can't go for that particular question that they want to ask of him internationally?
Well, you know what we try to avoid within the legal system is what we call double jeopardy. That a person will not go through the same trial twice.
If they are two different,
if they are different,
cases.
that's what I wanted to explain.
Yeah.
The case in the United States is involving hush pop, about $1.1 million Yahoo internet or some kind of scam or fraud. And this one in Nigeria has to do with drug. And the circumstances are different, the subject matter is different, the personalities are different. So if Nigeria wants to put him to trial for drug trafficking, he has to go through that process, go through trial, go through the process of exhausting his right of appeal to the Court of Appeal, to the Supreme Court, until the case is finally determined and he's exhausted all his remedies under the law. He will then be subjected to extradition and go and face the trial there. So while this Nigeria scenario is going on, you cannot send him to the United States of America.
So, this is a case that has built for months now, a long time, and people have had time to really look at this from different angles. And this is where we are right now. Is there any way this ends? Because, you talked about the conspiracy theories, how this, we're choosing might be choosing a lesser evil. Trial here as opposed to extradition. So is there any way this ends that is a lesser evil? What are the options ahead for him?
The general thinking within the Nigerian public is that when people who are highly influential in government get involved in this kind of scenario, scandals, you may call it, there's always some kind of soft landing from our experience. And so if you ask me, I would doubt the capacity of the system, I'm talking about the police and the NDLEA, to properly see this to its logical conclusion because of the antecedents.
Even the NDLEA?
Even the NDLEA. And the reason why I say even the NDLEA is this. In handing over the suspects to the NDLEA, the Inspector General of Police threw a bomb and said, look, within your own agencies, there are people who are complicit. There are people who facilitate. And the danger in all this is that you just use the system at your own advantage at the expense of the public. This whole scenario has revealed that NDLEA officers buy drugs from suspects and resell it to the young people, to youths. And that's the example we've seen in Abba Kyari's case. So it's not just the police. The NDLEA needs overhaul. Because what this has shown is to indict the agency itself. That dummy samples of drugs are being given in place of the original.
But the statement says that agent in particular got approval from the NDLEA to sort of play along. So wasn't this a plan from the scratch already?
No, I'm saying that you just see what happened in February 2022, what happened in 2021, what happened in 2020, what's been happening in the agency.
Do you have proof of that?
No, but that's what this has shown. The video and the evidence show clearly that there was some kind of opportunity open for people who hold positions of prosecution, investigation to swap.
Can that still be said to be happening now that General Marwa is there? Because he said, look, whatever must have been happening previously, then now he's there to make sure they stamp out anyone who is found culpable.
I don't think he is in a position to tell us that, with all due respect.
Why
and the
not?
reason is this. From what we have seen in these agencies, EFCC, the police, NDLEA, those who are in power have the capacity to put things under the carpet. There has to be some independent probe of these agencies if we need to get to the root of this, of the police system, of the NDLEA, of the EFCC, Because, you know, the kind of things they are exposed to brings too much temptation, as we have seen in this case. And so you can't trust those who are in power to use their own objective determination to come out with a result that will be independent, that will be reasonable and acceptable to everybody in Nigeria.
Incidentally, pardon me, I mean, I recall Jeremiah saying that you need to do better by these agents, you know, pay them well, pay them better and all that. But that's a different conversation, really. Perhaps it has its own effect on this. But back to my first question, the options ahead for him. This is a drug-related case, and I'm sure you have a lot to refer to regarding this. What are the possibilities in terms of conviction, you know, time and the rest? What are the possibilities ahead?
Well, unlike when Mr. Ibrahim Magu went through his own trial, he had a lawyer, and you could hear his own version. We were hearing different sides. You know, I take some little caution. I exercise a lot of caution to trust statements coming from government agencies, even in this case. Because when a government lives on propaganda, it becomes difficult for you to trust them. So it's when you get to court, when Kyari is out, he has a lawyer, his defense is unveiled, before you even be shocked that all this may just be a make-believe. So I'm just saying that everything to me still looks like drama.
Can we trust the court?
Yeah. No, of course, the court is just an umpire. It will give Kyari the opportunity to state his own defense. It will give the government to also unveil their prosecution. If this is true, surely there will be a conviction, no doubt about that. But I'm saying that from our experience generally, the issue of investigation is normally followed with force. There's no intelligence gathering. People are beaten to make confessional statements. It's not impossible that there's some blackmail, there's some means of trying to extort statements from people without following due. That's what I'm saying, that until you get to the stage where everybody is free to talk, the people are in custody. We haven't heard their own version. So it's a difficult thing at this stage.
At what point are we supposed to hear their own version?
When they get a lawyer and they are charged to court.
Okay.
If this is a serious matter, which is being followed all through, the evidence is available, there's documentary, there's a video, we should be talking about the next 2 weeks. These people should be in court.
Okay. In fact, that's where
in the next 2 weeks, if they can't get to court in 2 weeks' time, then you know that all this is just.
There was a lot of question and back and forth in different quarters about this, in terms of NDLA having made the arrest. Number one, under what circumstances can they arrest him? He's still a police officer, even though they say he's on suspension. So can the NDLA prosecute him as the case presently is now? What powers do they have? Where does the police come in this prosecution process?
Well, under the Act establishing the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, it has power of prosecution over anybody, apart from those who enjoy immunity under the Constitution. That's the president, vice, governor, and the deputy. Every other person in Nigeria who is accused or suspected to be involved in drug trafficking can be subjected to trial. But as I've explained to you, so long as Mr. Kyari is still a deputy commissioner of police on suspension, he has to go through his own orderly room trial within the police force and be derobed, and then he be then exposed to the NDLA to go through trial.
What if the police says, look, he's under suspension, he's not in our custody, the NDLA do whatever investigation, carry out whatever, go on with whatever process you want, we have no say here for now?
There has to be a synergy, because we're talking about Nigeria, our image. And that's why when you review this, you look at the circumstances. We declare Abba Kyari wanted, that's NDLA. IG says, no, we have arrested him. And within some minutes, they are in court. And what we now hear is that they've been in custody since Friday, before the press conference of Monday. They have been in the custody with the police since Friday, last week. So what is the drama about declaring him wanted? The police has been in custody with the police since Friday, 4 days.
Could it be maybe there was some attempt to not hand him over to the NDLA?
Well, that's why I keep saying that, you know, when it comes to Nigeria.
That's speculative, though.
No, I'm telling you the truth, Timberlane. This is our experience. That's why you take what comes from this particular, I'm talking about this particular regime, you take it with a pinch of salt.
Okay.
A pinch of salt.
All right. Just before we throw this to Abuja, to Parkway,
Yes.
You spoke about institutions the other time and that there is a need to dust up the entire system and all of that. I'm just wondering, Kyari referenced it earlier, maybe you need to speak to it. What is it that institutionally makes officers vulnerable? Institutionally speaking now. He referenced welfare. We can't give that excuse, but for you, historically or whatever, what is it that makes officers such as Abba Kyari and others in the NDLEA that the police have, as far as they are concerned, are also indicted, what is it that makes them vulnerable?
It's politics. That's just a simple truth. Politicians deploy their authority to use people involved in investigation and prosecution to witch hunt people to achieve other objectives apart from that which they were established to do.
Not welfare.
No, let me explain what I mean by politics. When it's time for government to hunt people that they consider in opposition, then they unleash these agencies, these institutions against them. So in that wise, the person gathers a lot of power. Impunity is also involved because it's serving the interests of the person in power. He's not checked. He becomes arrogant. He becomes excessive in the exercise of power and then uncontrollable. But because the person who is in power is enjoying the services being rendered to witch hunt certain people, they go unchecked. Because look at the history of EFCC, for instance, from Ribadu to Lamode to Farida Waziri to Magu. It's been the same story. It's been the same story. So these institutions do not work in line with the law setting them up. They serve the people who are in power. They are not interested in due prosecution. I mean, if you check the history of the prosecuting agencies, the bias that we witness in terms of arrest, prosecution, you see somebody who is in APC, we said to have committed the same offense. He's going scot-free, walking the street. You see somebody in the Abga who has been arrested. So what we want is an agency that has autonomy, agency that has independence, agency that is not subject to political influence.
But the law hasn't provided, to some extent, hasn't provided that independence to some of these agencies.
No.
Either the way their commanding officers are appointed.
No,
no.
Let me take you to EFCC, Chamberlain. The EFCC Act has a board. The board specified, the Act specified that there should be a board. And it's proper board as in board that meets, take decisions, review policies.
But appointed by who?
They are appointed by the president.
So
the same thing with the IGP.
So what I'm saying is that
same thing with some
those
judges.
things don't
same
function.
Thing with INEC.
They don't function.
Same thing with...
Because those who are in power, you use them for other purposes. So the person who is the chairman of the FCC has overshadowed the board. You don't even know their members. They don't even meet.
All right, let's bring Markwa and share some questions for you as well. Markwa?
Good morning, Mr. Adegborua. Let me quickly ask this about the derobing which you referred to. You talked about how he needs to go through an orderly room trial within the police before he can be taken to the court. Excuse me. So now that he has been sent over to the NDLEA and the NDLEA has confirmed that he is in their custody, what exactly are they supposed to be doing with him as it currently stands? Are they supposed to complete their investigation first before sending him back to the police? Or could they from here take him to the court, assuming they find, I mean, and they already say they have a trove of evidence, that those are their words, against him. What are they supposed to be doing with him in their custody?
Well, for those who are in custody who are still serving in the Nigeria Police Force in this particular case, what is required is that the NDLEA by now should be gathering its own report, intelligence report, and do a statement, a finding, a kind of report that will show prima facie that an offense has been committed. That report should be forwarded to the police authorities who would, based on that report, conduct orderly room trial and then come up with their own decision. But if there is no willpower to do that, in the absence of that, for instance, as you have asked, they can be charged to court by the NDLEA even while serving. If there is unwillingness on the part of the police authorities to do the needful. Because you've seen the ding-dong between the IG and the Police Service Commission. But for what happened on Monday, the Police Service Commission had given 2 weeks ultimatum to the IG to review the case of Abba Kyari for the purpose of extradition. And this has just only added Philip to that. So they can be charged to court even while serving, if there is no willpower by the police authorities to subject them to a room trial.
Okay, so they have, anyway, I'll come back to that issue, but let's talk about investigating past arrests, or past investigations conducted by Mr. Abba Kyari. There have been those who have now started calling for an investigation into investigations conducted in the past by him. Do you think that this is necessary?
Not at all. I don't think so. And the reason is very simple. He is not the only serving police officer or law enforcement agent that is being involved in scandalous allegations. The fact that he is involved in this drug cartel will not of necessity taint all the investigations he's conducted in the past, particularly people who are facing trial already. If you look at the case of Evans, for instance, we can't say because Mr. Kyari is now alleged to be involved in drug trafficking, then you set aside all the investigations conducted in respect of such matters. The cases will be dealt with on their own merits. It's left for the suspects or those who are involved or anybody who is a victim to come out and state the facts. But we can't do a blanket rejection of all these previous investigations just because of this particular isolated matter. But if there's a link between this and any other case he has investigated in the past, those involved should be bold enough to come up with such allegations which should be investigated, and if verified, then steps can be taken. But we can't do a blanket rejection based on these events.
Okay, let me go back to the statement of the Nigeria police, which they released in the wake of handing over Mr. Kyari to the NDLEA. They talked about having conducted their own in-house investigation, which they said the IGP ordered, and that they established reasonable grounds for strong suspicion that the IRT officers involved in the operation could have been involved in some underhand and unprofessional dealings, as well as official corruption, which compromised ethical standards in their dealings with the suspects and exhibits recovered. They also say the police investigation established that the international narcotics cartel involved have strong ties with the officers of the NDLEA, where they were also trying to, where they also indicted, it was same NDLEA officials, whom they said were on the payroll of these narcotic officers. But what I'm trying to establish here was that the police already conducted his own in-house investigations, on the strength of which they sent him to the NDLEA. Shouldn't that have been enough for the police to conduct their own orderly room trial before sending him to the NDLEA?
Well, Maupe, I verily believe, unless I'm proved wrong, that the police authorities had an interest to serve in respect of Mr. Kyari's case generally. But for the NDLEA involvement in this particular case, we may never have heard all this. This kind of statement from the police authorities, as far as I'm concerned, is self-serving. It's just to save face. Otherwise, I mean, you know that this hush puppy thing has been on for over close to 1 year now. And we've not had a detailed report from the police on a matter that is purely documentary, on a matter that the FBI had investigated, and we have evidence, and the accomplice is already going through trial, had confessed. So for me, generally, the police in Nigeria can do well if they have the intention to do so and are not interested in any subject matter. But once there's an interest, you can't get the best out of the police. So the statement for me is enough to show that there is room to proceed on an orderly room trial by the police. But he has to go through that trial and offer his defense. Otherwise, the statement on Twitter has not shown his own side of the story or what his defense could be. And our law presumes somebody innocent until otherwise proved guilty. So he has to go through that trial for us to indeed know that a prima facie case has been established against him. But for the NDLEA, they can charge him to court at any time once a prima facie case is established.
Okay, it is interesting that you say that despite that, it doesn't tie the hands of the NDLEA from proceeding. But, you know, there is no way we can talk about Mr. Kyari without talking about SARS. And you were very involved in prosecuting, beg your pardon, in the judicial panel, which conducted hearings into atrocities committed by SARS officials. And we do know that Mr. Kyari, you know, oversaw SARS in Lagos at some point. They made some important breakthroughs while he was in Lagos, but at the same time, there were serious allegations of high-handedness and doing things that ought not to have been done, you know, allegations pressed against SARS officials. Should we be looking into those complaints once again?
Thank you very much. Apart from the fact that we looked at the allegations against the Special Anti-Robbery Squad generally, we had a specific petition involving Mr. Kyari in the matter that unveiled in the NDLEA case, and we investigated it and made our report. So what happened is that generally, the Nigerian police lacks capacity for proper investigation. This is the truth. In the over 180 petitions that we investigated in the NSAS panel, for instance, it was clear that the police normally do adopt torture, physical brutality, in trying to extract confessional statements from suspects. And that's cuts across generally, not just Lagos, not just SARS, the general police and other law enforcement agencies. So the issue of funding is important. There must be a way intelligence can be gathered without physical interaction, without physical combat, without physical torture of suspects. Because that's what obtains in advanced jurisdictions, that the police is so equipped with enough equipment, enough operational facilities that will enable them get the truth out of you even when you're unwilling. But the experience in Nigeria, not just for SARS, but general investigating agencies, is that you need to beat people, you need to handcuff them, you need to hang them on the ceiling, you need to torture them even to the point of death.
Does that still happen?
It happens every day. It's happening even today.
Is the ACJ against that?
Oh, not just ACJ, the Nigerian Constitution in particular, Section 34 of our Constitution. It's against treatment with cruelty or inhuman dignity.
Do they
it's
know?
Against torture.
Do the police officers know then? Because, I mean, they're meant to be enforcers of that Constitution.
Well, what we also discover in the NSAT panel is the issue of training for police personnel. There seems to be a lot of ignorance within the lower rank. Yeah. The information in the police is normally better when you get to the higher rank.
And they behave much better.
And the higher rank don't interact with suspects because they are not on the field. It's the lower ranks that go out to execute arrests, and those lower ranks have their own understanding of the law differently. They don't believe in the Constitution, or they don't know the Constitution. And the only thing they know is that, look, just obey. If you don't obey,
Mr.
we beat you up.
Yeah. The higher ranking officers didn't get there.
They came from the lower rank?
Height. They came from the lower ranks.
No. What happened is this. In the forces now, if you want to get higher and you're a university graduate, you probably come in as a cadet or something. We're talking about private recruits. Those who are just being recruited now, who are being trained in police college. Constable. You know, who don't eat food or eat once in a day, and they transfer the aggression to the citizens. But if you're a graduate and you are joining the police, you probably start.
It's different.
You know, so it's always different.
What happened to the report that the panel made against him? Do you know if anything is being done about it?
I think that from my understanding, you know, there were two reports. There's a general report involving police brutality, and then there's a second report involving a Lekki toll incident. I think in respect of the first report, which is where Abba Kyari's case was concluded and forwarded, I believe government accepted virtually all our recommendations, and these matters are being treated by the government. I believe so.
For the IRT now, what should happen to them? Because it said that there's some people who are still loyal or working with him. What should happen to that team at the moment?
I think, if you ask me, is to ask the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who has statutory authority, not only over the police, but over all the other agencies, to summon courage to be able to overhaul the Nigerian police force. Because if you look at the scenario of the Abba Kyari matter, is that the current IGP left to handle this matter won't get the best out of it. Look at the wedding of his son, where Mr. Kyari attended and posted pictures.
Should they have not allowed him to come into that wedding? Or?
No, I'm saying that such open fraternity with somebody that you are supposed to be probing, you know, to the extent of that social media interaction, openly fraternizing with somebody that you have just disciplined, and you're supposed to come up with a report for the people of Nigeria and the international community. So I believe that, personally, from what I have read and seen, it will be difficult to trust the current leadership of the police to handle Abba Kyari's matter. And not just that matter, but matters involving discipline, matters involving corruption. Because the truth is that unless maybe God will come down and tell us what is inside Mr. Kyari or other police officer, there's no way he could go ahead in this fashion without those who are higher than him being in the know.
But you are the one in law who always says that everyone is innocent until proven guilty.
No, I'm talking about overhauling the police.
No. When you talked about the fraternization, he's not been proven guilty.
Yeah, he was on suspension.
Well,
he was on suspension by the same person who organized the wedding. And then, so if the person who you suspect to have committed an offense and there's a request for extradition and they still go ongoing, left to me, he was in bad taste.
Then
was in bad taste.
The big question about proceeds of crime. We've seen this in different agencies. There's a certain mindset about it that, well, they seem to be above the law when it comes to that. We see the same question with the EFCC, same questions about the police in some cases, even in the military. If we look at what the EFCC said they've seized from a top military officer. How should we approach this?
Currently, there is no law regulating this.
So they do with it whatever they deem fit.
The best the AG did was sometimes in 2020, he made some kind of executive order in respect of non-conviction forfeiture, by which his office was to coordinate proceeds involving non-conviction forfeiture. But of course, the FCC has been up in arms against the AG in respect of that. I think the National Assembly currently is working on legislation to regulate proceeds of crime. Until that is passed and assented to by the president, as we are sitting here, it's the heads of those agencies that determine what happens to those. And in fact, if we could shock you, is that, and I don't know why that became a matter of public policy, those agencies are entitled to 10%.
Of cocaine?
Oh, no, I'm talking about the cash,
okay.
not cocaine, please. Okay. I'm talking about the
just to be clear.
They're entitled to 10%.
Okay, right.
You know, officially, we shouldn't be. The agencies involved in investigation should be funded by government. Whatever you recover in the course of your investigation should go into custody as exhibit. The government should have another agency that should deal with that. And indeed, that's what's causing problem for most heads of these agencies.
Permit me to, my apologies, Kyari. You said that the police needs an overhaul. What is it that needs really to be done? What kind of, when there is an overhaul, what are the likely outcomes that you're expecting? You would remember that the ICPC is supposed, part of the functions of the police is the ICPC. They weren't doing this, so ICPC came on board. EFCC, the same thing. All the extracts of police functions going into these agencies. So if you're talking about a police overhaul, what do you intend, or what do you hope to see that will justify that indeed this police will now do its job?
Now, overhaul is one issue of funding. We got evidence from the NSAS panel that police officers are responsible for procuring their equipment, their uniforms, the boots, everything they use, they buy it personally with their own money. Up to their underwear, everything. And that's not supposed to be so. Now, the accommodation, the welfare, the places they stay, the training they go through, makes them become frustrated and desperate. And so they transfer this aggression, this frustration to the citizens in terms of interaction. So when you talk about overhaul, you talk about proper funding, then you talk about training. What we also discover is that policemen are not aware of the rights of the citizens. They're not aware. On the average, That, for instance, if a citizen is arrested, he's not supposed to be forced to make a statement. He's supposed to have access to his lawyer. He's supposed to be informed of the reasons for the arrest. You know, in which circumstances do you handcuff people? How do you treat people with cruelty? The police people were not aware from the people who interacted with at the panel. So there has to be funding. Then second thing, the third thing I think is medical examination. Because before you expose somebody to handle firearms, you must be sure that the person is mentally stable. What kind of level of delayed provocation can you subject him to before he begins to fire you? You know, so before you get somebody to go and handle firearm, he must have gone through some level of training that will really make him to become temperate, even in the height of provocation. Such as we saw at the NSAS panel where a police officer was slapped severally and he didn't do anything. And we had to honor him, you know, at that time.
Well, there's no way we'll have this conversation with you. And we've touched on it without talking NSAS, the panel, the outcome. And, you know, it happened then and we thought, we're on the verge of something big. We're on the verge of a major change in Nigeria. For you, I mean, being part of that panel, you know, you submitted the report and all. How close are we to getting a closure to NSAS?
We got it in Lagos right, half and half. And what I mean by half and half is this. The governor actually set up a compensation fund prior to the takeoff of the NSAS panel. 200 million naira at first, and then subsequently another 200 million naira. Such that once we go through a petition and we find it meritorious, we award compensation and pay immediately. And to that extent, we paid the entire 400 million naira that was released. And even asked for more. So it was about 430 million naira, which was paid directly to victims. So in that regard, a lot of progress was made in healing people. The money may not bring back the people who have died. It may not restore the injuries. But at least you were able to, in some cases, bring the aggressor to come and face the victim. You make them accountable. The sense that I'm above the law was no longer there because we brought people to come and face their victims. And their apologies were made, healing occurred, reconciliation. So that was achieved. But the other point about the one that's critical to the youth, which is at the Lekki Toll Gate incidents, we shouldn't allow politics to derail the purpose of that exercise. Otherwise, there has to be that interaction. What we expected was government to use the report to get across and engage the young people and bring them over. Talk, sit down. What areas of this report can we look at? How do we achieve this? Rather than the kind of propaganda that we saw. So I think
Isn't that what the walk was meant to achieve? That walk for peace? Wasn't that meant to achieve some sort of, you know, coming together?
No, there's no peace without justice. You can't achieve peace if there is no equity, if there is no justice. And I think that was the gap. And I think it's still on the table. And I believe the governor should be working on it, that he should use the report to engage the young people.
But the ultimate intention was for different states come up with the report, get it to the national level, then government takes a decision.
I believe that the report is to be forwarded to the National Executive Council, which actually brought the initiative. And so what we did was that in our own case, for instance, we sent some of our recommendations even to the National Assembly, especially petitioners that have judgments which some money had been awarded in their favor for torture, for breach of their fundamental rights. So I still expected that the government of Lagos State, along with other states, will collate this report and present it to the National Executive Council for implementation. Otherwise, it will just be like a political smoke screen. And I don't think that will be fair.
Okay, we'll go to break, but we'll return and wrap this up in just a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. It's our concluding moments now. Well, haven't looked at all these other matters, but it turns out that there are issues of development that we need to mainstream. There are issues of judiciary, for instance. I know that some time ago, the question as to Executive Order 10 came into fruition. But when that decision came through, did you expect that, of course, that was the way the judgment was going to go in the first place?
No, I didn't expect. The judiciary missed the opportunity to rescue itself. I didn't expect that judgment at all. And the reason is this. It's been a long journey for us to free judiciary from the executive, and the executive in particular, the governors. The problem we've had with judicial independence, autonomy, is the overbearing influence of the governors. And unless we remove that, we can't get justice for the ordinary man on the street. Unless we get to a stage when the judiciary will have control of its own funds. So long as the governor succeeds in sitting on the fund of the judiciary, let's forget about getting effective justice administration. So the Supreme Court missed that opportunity to be able to clearly articulate a position that will free the heads of the courts, that will allow the Accountant General of the Federation to release money directly from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, directly to an account nominated by the Chief Judge, not to take the money of the judiciary through the government of the state. How do you expect a Chief Judge to go and be lobbying an Accountant General of a state, to lobby the Attorney General of a state, to lobby the Governor of a state, those who have cases before him?
But
how does that work?
Aren't they two different things? Because it's a federal system, can the federal government be dictating to the states how they should get their funds to the judiciary? Or shouldn't they have said, okay, look, at the state level, we'll restructure it at that level, and not the federal government dictating to the states how it should happen?
No, it's not dictation. What the Constitution says clearly, through the amendment that was achieved by the 8th National Assembly, led by Senator Bukola Saraki, is to change the character of Section 163 to ensure that money meant for the judiciary will not go through the state. This is the objective. This is the autonomy we are campaigning for. So it's not a matter of the president tampering with the funds of the state. The judiciary is the third arm of government. It is not subsumed under the executive of that state. It's an organ agency on its own that's standing alone. So what we are advocating for is that the money meant for that judiciary should not pass through the executive.
Does the
because
law...
the legislature have their own budget, executive have their own budget, the judiciary should have its own budget.
Does the Constitution permit the governors to sit on the monies?
No.
Exactly. So
no, that's why I'm saying the Supreme Court missed the opportunity.
My point here is, if the Constitution already spells out the way it ought to be, and does that mean then that the governors have been operating the Constitution in breach?
Oh, yes.
If that is the case, who then should be taking that case?
Well, that's why, you know, when a victim is unable to properly marshal his complaint, then you probably say you don't cry more than the bereaved. And that's why I said, for many of us, we got that judgment with a lot of shock.
Was that particular case the prayer that was in court?
If the Executive Order 10, the purpose of Executive Order 10 was to ensure that the money that is meant for the judiciary will be paid directly by the federal government over and above the governors.
The point here
and that's
is,
what the Constitution says.
That's what the Constitution says.
Yes.
My point here is, the Constitution is being operated in breach by the chief executives of the states.
You need to take them to court to get a judgment against them.
Can he say so based on that Supreme Court judgment now?
No, you see, before this Supreme Court judgment, the Supreme Court judgment only says, let Executive Order 10 go. It didn't say that you shouldn't pay the money to the judiciary.
Exactly.
In fact, before that judgment, Jusun had obtained judgment from the Federal High Court. Dr. Lisa Bakoba, SAN, had obtained judgment from the Federal High Court asking that money be paid directly. It's just that governors don't obey it.
You know, this is a very rare case where the judiciary is judge and respondent in its own case.
Well,
and you said it's a missed opportunity.
It's a missed opportunity.
Should that stop the judiciary from still dispensing justice free and fairly, whoever is sitting on the funds? Should that stop the judiciary from doing its job of dispensing justice without fairness, without favor and all that?
He who pays the piper dictates the tune.
And dictates the judgment as well.
I mean, we've had an instance, for instance, where a governor was to go and present the budget for the judiciary for the year, a chief judge rather, and was in the waiting room of His Excellency. And some other senior lawyers were there when the governor suddenly came in and said, CJ, you are here. What of our case? So and so case. You know? And what that shows clearly is this. You rub my back, I rub. So if you want to lobby for money, you also help us handle our matters.
Oh, dear.
Oh, yes.
And politics. Speaking about politics, I mean, they are doing that thing again. So who knows? Largely this year might be a lot of political stories and issues hugging the headlines and the front pages, pushing a lot of things to the background. Now, this question about zoning, which both parties seem to be at daggers drawn over, what do you think about all of that?
I think that I mean, in our national life, we should be sensitive. And that's why Section 14 was inserted into the Constitution, to avoid a dominance of either political or economic power by a particular section of the country against other sections. So if you put that Section 14 to play, I think fairness will say that in the coming dispensation of the 2023 general elections, all political parties should have candidates who come from the southern part of the country. That's equity, that's justice. That accords with the framework and the mind of those who drafted that constitution.
But that does not preclude other people.
No, it doesn't.
I'm not
saying it precludes. I'm just saying that that is the directive principle. If you go to chapter 2 of the Constitution, the heading is directive principle, how the state should be run, how Nigeria, our expectation for Nigeria, one of those principles is federal character. And that federal character says that there should be no aggregation of a particular section or dominance of power. So if Major General President Muhammad Buhari is in power and has been in power since 2015, exhausts second tenure, is going to finish his tenure in 2023, it will be totally unexpected to say that the next person who will come after him should also come from the north. It will be totally unexpected.
All right,
but not illegal.
Not illegal. Not illegal.
Oh dear. Okay, well, we have to thank you for coming on, Mr. Bolu Adegborowa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back in a moment and still weighing on this whole matter about the police. That will be in just a moment. Don't go away.
It is about international collaboration. We are collaborating, we are working, and then it is work in progress.
But the Abba Kyari matter is not about collaboration. It's about the investigation that was instituted on Nigerians within the police, and also will link to your office.
But there are components of it. It is of international dimension. One thing I can tell you about
what's the outcome of the investigation from Nigerian side?
Well, there are a lot of issues that are ongoing, inclusive of the possibility of consideration for extradition and associated things. That is where the collaboration element of it comes into play, in respect of all the two cases.
So there's a possibility of extradition?
There could be a need or perhaps the possibility of making such requests, and they are looking into it.
Was there a request for extradition?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the parties are discussing, the parties are collaborating, and then there are exchange of correspondence from the perspectives of investigation, from the perspectives of extradition and associated things.
Is a police officer found guilty from the investigation?
You can't find someone guilty. You can't find someone guilty, but perhaps the reasonable grounds for suspicion can be established, will translate to prosecution that will eventually translate.
Because the panel has a quasi-judicial role and function. So they could also, of course, find some kind of culpability in their investigation.
Prima facie case, that is what we are talking of, reasonable grounds for suspicion. Reasonable grounds for suspicion has been established, and that will eventually translate to the possibility of prosecution and eventual conviction, if indeed, at the end of the day, the one is adjudged guilty by a court of law.
So,
Mr. Austin Iwa joins us to weigh in on the matter. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, this matter concerning Mr. Abba Kyari and DLA's arrest of him, well, several quarters think this puts the police in bad light. They didn't handle this case well. What do you think, sir?
Thank you for having me, Chamberlain. I think this case, this particular latest case, comes as a shock and an embarrassment, not only to the country, but to the police itself, considering that this officer already had a problem involving the FBI, and then somehow he was allowed to operate within the fringes of the police while being on suspension. So it's a shock and it's a shame, not only to the country, as well as an embarrassment to the Nigerian police force. It tells a lot about the nature of internal accountability within the police, accountability and supervision of police officers, even whilst on suspension.
Yeah, but Mr. Iwa, if it comes to them as a shock, doesn't that mean that there's something fundamentally wrong? Because remember some time ago, there was that report by the Auditor General of the Federation about the police armory, certain weapons not being accounted for, that was sent to the House of Reps, who haven't heard any response from the police as of yet on that matter. That was under operational matter. This same matter is an operational matter. So they will know him. They know his character. They know his team. They've had several comments about him. So how could this be a shock to them?
No, I'm not saying that it's a shock to the police. I'm saying that it's a shock to Nigerians and an embarrassment to the Nigerian police force that somebody who is on suspension is possibly allowed to operate within the fringes of his suspension, within the fringes of the police, and even still has contacts with his previous office. It's a shame, as far as I'm concerned, and and that's what I said. It tells a lot about the nature of accountability and supervision within the force. So something is wrong along that line that needs to be fixed.
If he has contacts within the force, perhaps within his former team, the IRT, what should happen to those people who are in contact with him? Because chances are that he might have been impeding the performance of the current acting person in IRT.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. He may have been impeding the performance of the current officer. But you need to also know that this is a character that over the years has amassed tremendous experience in the field, in police operations, and sometimes maybe based on that, he may be contacted once or twice to give his experience and advice on certain operation. But to allow him to take control of an operation of the nature that we are just hearing about speaks a lot about the structures that we have in the police that are extremely weak in some areas, and structures that are difficult for it to conform to rules and regulations.
Let's talk about the investigative capabilities of the Nigeria police, because that came up in our conversation with Mr. Ebolo Adeburua, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. And he's of the opinion that the police is not capable of conducting proper investigation, at least in this particular case. Because, I mean, if you've been following this case, recall that, you know, the extradition conversation came up very early in 2021. The IGP ordered a probe in July. August, he was suspended. But that probe dragged up until now. And, I mean, this was meant to be an investigation, a quick one, because it was going to prove a lot. I mean, do well for the image of the police and, you know, tell a major story, not just for Nigeria, but to the world. But that had dragged up until now when the NDLA now brought up this case. So does that raise questions for you as well about the investigative capabilities of the police?
I believe that the police is capable in many respects, and I know that even currently the police is working towards reforming its investigative capacity. I know that because I'm involved, and even today we're having a meeting with the Force CID to see how that process will be strengthened with the British Council. So I know that there has been some challenges here and there in terms of capacity, in terms of professionalism, in terms of skills, modern skills and competencies in investigative processes. But I know that something is being done about that, and it's also within the context of police reform that is going on internally. On the other hand, you mentioned about the previous investigation. I'm sure that is the fraud case, the hush puppy case. You need to understand that the police will find it difficult to carry out effective investigation on the basis of evidence that is provided on Twitter or pages of newspapers. I am not very sure that the panel that was set up to investigate the hush puppy case received formally documents from the FBI to use as in their investigation. I am not even sure whether a member of the FBI came into the country to make presentations to the panel that was set up by the Inspector General of Police. So it will be very difficult for police to rely on evidence that is available in the on the pages of the internet. Evidential documents must be presented properly to any investigation panel. But yes, I agree with you. There are weaknesses here and there when it comes to police investigative capacity.
Well, I mean, the police is our lead investigative agency. The police is big. It's an elephant, I mean, telling from its logo. And I say that again, the capacity of the police, I imagine, is huge in Nigeria, not just in terms of manpower, but resources available to it. And I want to imagine, except that didn't happen, that Nigeria police must have made some requests to the FBI to ask for some of these evidence. But even at that, you said that there are witnesses and all that. So why should it take July, August, September, October, November, December, and now in January, we still don't have anything about that particular investigation?
Same question, H1, all of us outside the force keep asking. Same question, why is it taking? This is a simple case. I mean, cases of fraud are some of the most simplest cases you can investigate because it has to do with tracing money, tracing evidence. So it surprises me myself that for more than 5 months, we are still talking about this case. Well,
we're going to sort that out.
Evidence that has not been made available. Evidence that has not been made available before the panel that investigated it. And I'm sure that is the basis on which the Police Service Commission threw away the investigation report as weak.
There are those, Mr. Iwa, who are saying that the entire system needs to be sniffed to find out if there are similar, people. There are people who could be perpetrating such acts as has been discovered in the case of Mr. Abba Kyari so far. In your opinion, do you see any value in that, especially in the light of the fact that the police and the NDLEA are talking back at each other on this matter?
Yes, I mean, of course, I won't be surprised if there are other Abba Kyaris in the system. I won't be surprised. The police is not a perfect organization, and so the staff there, the people working there will not be perfect. There may be others there that are committing all kinds of crimes at different levels. And I think that we can fish out this kind of people when you have a proper police reform on ground that we set in, we look at the system, the structures, and the processes, and even guidance of doing things within the police. And through that, I think you'll be able to find out those people who are not supposed to be where they are. And then something can be done about them. Either they are thrown out of the system or they are reformed themselves.
You've operated within the system for many years before you retired and got to become AIG. So I'm going to ask you the same question I've asked a number of other people, and you probably will be able to speak to that better. What is it in the system that makes police officers vulnerable?
First of all, you need to understand that police is a neglected organization, neglected by government itself. The police is supposed to be responsible to the police council. that has been created by the Constitution of Nigeria, but that council doesn't operate. The council is supposed to be responsible for the administration of the Nigerian police, the supervision, and the management of the police, but it never works. It never works. I mean, the police council is like a board of directors that charts the future of any organization. But unfortunately, the police is left out to operate on its own. And secondly, on the basis of funding, there is nothing in the police, in the core policing function that is funded by government. Investigation is not funded. Core aspects of police work are not funded at all. Investigations are not funded. Patrols are not funded. Other aspects of crime prevention are not funded by government. So we find a police organization that is left to operate on its own whims, that officers now scout around, find any means possible to deliver. And you find an organization that is under pressure, internal pressure to perform, external pressure to perform. And then with the neglect in terms of training, equipment and other things, you discover that everybody is operating according to what they think is the correct thing to do.
Well, Mr. Wabbs, well, I mean, the thing is, I mean, if the police service commission is not working, then something should be done about them. Either we disband, reorganize, change the laws, and get something that works. That's aside.
Police
but then
council.
concerning, sorry, police council.
Police council.
Yes, please. That's what I meant to say. So concerning Mr. Kyari's case, it's good to actually see that cooperation between the NDLEA and the police. So should the police have gone the whole hog to ensure that not just suspend him, but get him out of the system such that he can now face the law as deemed fit, whatever it is?
Let me first of all clarify one thing. The Nigerian police has responsibility, constitutional and other legal responsibility, to investigate any crime in this country. Any crime, whether it's terrorism, whether it's terrorism, whether it's the one we have, whether it's drug, they have that responsibility to carry out to investigate. So the fact that the police is handing over this case to NDLEA speaks that the police wants to cooperate with NDLEA. Nothing stops the police from investigating this case entirely and even asking NDLEA to submit their officials. But I think that the IGP was magnanimous enough to do a preliminary investigation, which was also made public, and then sent to NDLEA to continue with the investigation. And secondly, for NDLEA to properly prosecute Kyari must be dismissed first from the Nigerian police. That's the standard procedure. That's the standard protocol, that you cannot prosecute a serving officer. He or she has to be dismissed from the service. So I'm sure that by the time NDLEA finishes their investigation, they will send the report to the police. The police will use that investigation and conduct an internal disciplinary process that will lead to his exit before prosecution can take place.
Wow. All right. So that suggests that it's not going to happen as fast. The prosecution may not happen as fast as some people think it will.
Well, that will depend on the evidence before NDLEA. If they can wrap everything up within a short period of time, it won't be a problem.
All right, Mr. Osinewa, thank you very much indeed for your time today.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ewa is former AIG of police. So well, that is it with this segment. Just give us a moment. We'll turn our attention to another matter entirely. Don't go away.
Once there is a convention and a substantive NWC comes in, Maimala has ceased to be the caretaker chairman. He's enjoying it at the detriment of the party and the people in the country.
Detriment?
Yes. He wouldn't mind killing the party in his own vested interest.
Those are very strong words.
I'm telling you authoritatively, seeing. Okay, let me ask you some questions. Let me say some things that will make you know that this man does not want to go. Where are the subcommittees for proper organization of the next week's convention? Where are they? Who is he speaking to? When was the last time Maimala Buni sat with his caretaker 13-man committee? When? When was the last time he sat with them? We want to know. What are they planning? This is 2 weeks to convention. Nobody is talking with anybody. There should be subcommittee. 13 people cannot give us a convention. You have to have subcommittees for election on the day of convention. You have to have subcommittees for logistics. You have to have such subcommittees for mobilization. You know, these are the subcommittees that will properly organize the convention. It has not been announced.
Well, I guess you get to see the gentleman whom I have with me in the studio, and that's the issue we're still talking about this morning, the APC convention, the upcoming convention. Well, I was just saying that they'll get to see you right now, and they will know that that's not your picture. But we have with us this morning Mr. Kingsley Fanwo, who is the Commissioner for Information in Kogi State. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you.
That certainly was your picture. And we have with us Mr. Aliyu Audu, who is the convener, APC Rebirth Movement. You're also welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So, gentlemen, let me ask you, because it would seem that this is confirmed. Even as of yesterday, when our correspondent spoke with one or two of the governors who were supposed to be at a meeting with the president before that meeting was cancelled, it will seem that the February 26th date still stands. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's still February 26th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have that information as well, or do you have another information?
There's not been any contrary information, so, I mean, that's all we can hold on to for now.
Okay. Well, 2 days ago, we had two gentlemen here in the studio. We had Mr. Modibo, and we also had Mr. Alwan Hassan. And you heard Mr. Alwan Hassan there raising some of the issues that some party members are apprehensive about before the February 26th convention date. And I don't know if those reasons also, those issues also resonate with you, Mr. Fanwo, do they?
Thank you very much. I think the beauty we'll witness with Channel Television is that when these kind of issues are raised, you always provide a platform for us to set the record straight and enlighten the people and, you know, to be able to disinfect the misinformation. You know, those frivolous allegations were not true. When you talk about a convention is a process. You know, you set out your timetable, and, you know, he was raising issues about the committees that will be organizing the convention. The party, with the timetable rolled out, we know that on Friday, the 19th of February, the subcommittees, the list for subcommittees will be released by the party. We've started the process for the past few weeks. We've been able to receive the report of the Reconciliation Committee led by Senator Abdullahi Adamu.
Just a moment, you said it's misinformation. As at the time he was speaking, there were no subcommittees. In fact, as of today, there are still no subcommittees. On the program that day, Mr. Modibo was the one who revealed that on Friday, these subcommittees will be revealed.
That's why I call it misinformation.
How is it a misinformation?
The timetable came out over 2 weeks ago, and it stipulates that on the 19th of February, the list of subcommittees will be out. Okay. It was rolled out by the party, by the National Secretary of the CPC. So it's misinformation, because I'm very sure Mr. Alwan was aware that this list will be out on Friday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, despite the fact that the list will be out on Friday, there are those who have reservations about having a subcommittee, the list of subcommittees for those who will be involved in the planning of a convention less than 2 weeks before the convention itself. They think that that's a sign, a recipe for disaster.
No, I do not believe that, because you have all the processes leading to the convention. What's the main function of those subcommittees is to be able to ensure that the convention is successful. They have about 7 days to do that. So it's not a problem. The other processes have been ongoing: reconciliation, submission of reconciliation committee report, issuing of certificates of return to the state chairman, and all of that. These have been going on. You don't need all those committees to be able to do that. So it is a process that is ongoing.
Yeah. So are you aware, as he did say, that there was actually a list, a schedule for the release of or for certain things to happen, including subcommittees to be constituted?
Yes. He's right. What the schedule that was released by the caretaker committee states is by the 19th of February, there will be publication of subcommittees. However, considering the fact that the same schedule stated that the 14th of February, the party will commence the sale of form. Today it is 16, 3 days after. There's no announcement. You don't sell form without zoning. Let's even assume that, for whatever reason, zoning isn't completed. We expect that some sort of negotiation between, the stakeholders to agree on the zoning. Let's assume that they haven't been able to come to a conclusion yet on who gets what, which region gets what. There are positions that do not require zoning. If I am running for national vice chairman, North Central, Northeast, it doesn't matter. It's going to go to Northeast or North Central. Youth leader, what's it called? Deputy youth leader, zonal. They don't need to wait for zoning. All the regional position, about excess of maybe 40-something or 42 of them. 42 positions don't require zoning. If the caretaker committee are honest and sincere in their approach, you would expect that they would have started selling the forms for those positions that don't require zoning. You gave us 14 for sales of form. It's the 16th. You haven't commenced. Why should I trust your 19th for publication of subcommittees? Let's even assume that we expect that they have put, work in plan to come up with that schedule, which means you expect that from 14th to 19th, because of the complexity of the work involved in sales of form, 14 to 19, you require 5 days to do it. 3 days are gone. So are you telling us you're going to start doing in 2 days what you were supposed to do in 5 days? So what happens when the 19th come and they realize, oh, we haven't sold as much form as we are supposed to sell, so we cannot release subcommittees? What confirmation are they waiting for to release subcommittees for this?
So you think that schedule is already in danger? Because so
clearly,
far, certain...
Clearly, and it's a deliberate act by the caretaker committee. I am not surprised, to be honest with you. I am not.
Why are you not surprised?
Because if you remember, we've been everywhere saying this. We've been labeled, as people who are bringing... But because we need to do this. All the internal communications don't work. 2 weeks ago, APC Rebet decided to give them the benefit of doubt, reach out to the other young group who are not, in cohesion, and we discussed with them as reason why we at our demography must show leadership, how we must come together and unite. And you saw the outcome of that. The PYM, who have purportedly sacked the caretaker committee, went to court and withdrew their case. We went to the party secretariat, met with the youth leader of the party and the management of the party to show that we are ready to work with the party and ensure we have a hitch-free, credible, and successful convention. That is us doing our own part in good faith. What have we gotten from them? Silence. You don't run an organization as big as APC like this.
You are not a part of the caretaker committee, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay, but you do have information into the runnings of the caretaker committee?
Definitely. Any member of the party who wants this information can always access the information from the caretaker committee. because they operate from the national secretariat of the party.
So the apprehensions of those who have had their reservations in terms of how the caretaker committee has been operating doesn't count?
Yeah, people have the right to be apprehensive. You know, it's if you choose to be apprehensive, nobody's going to blame you for that. You have the right to be apprehensive, like the forms that they are talking about. I was at the National Secretariat yesterday, and I saw those forms. I saw a sample of those forms. I'm not sure they've not started selling those forms, because if you want to be the national chairman of the party, for instance, you will want to wait to see whether there will be an arrangement of zoning. I'm calling it arrangement because as far as APC is concerned, it's not constitutional. It is not in the constitution of the party. But there could be a political arrangement that will take care of zoning. So you want to wait to see whether that will happen. And I'm very sure in the last couple of days, our governors and some stakeholders in the party have been meeting to see how they can resolve that. So you don't, if you are from the Northeast, for instance, you will not want to go and pick the form for national chairman when it is going to another zone at the end of the day. And this could even spark a lot of litigations, and that's why I think the key actors who want to vie for these offices are being, trying to watch what the party hierarchy will come out with in terms of political solution as to whether there will be an arrangement of zoning or everything will be thrown open.
Okay, but the time is running out because the party did say that it was going to start the sale of forms on the 14th. So if the party said they're going to start sale of forms on the 14th and the zoning arrangement is not yet out, don't you think that people should be rightfully apprehensive? I
said it that we can't even say there will be zoning because zoning is not in the constitution of the party, but we can have an arrangement. I was talking about an arrangement. We can have a political arrangement that will say, for instance, let's concede this to this zone. Let's concede this to the. That is what they are doing at the moment, and I'm very sure in the next couple of they will be able to come up with something, and the aspirants will be able to pick their
what you have said essentially is that zoning could be on the table. And that if it's going to be on the table, that has to be done first before the forms are sold. Isn't that correct?
Definitely.
So if that is correct, and the party did say that they were going to sell on the 14th, start the sale on the 14th, and they haven't started, isn't that already a sign of trouble?
No, it's not a sign of trouble. It's something you need to go through. It's something you need to go through. It's better you have a
successful... Didn't they think that they would have gone through it before the 14th?
No, it's better you have a successful convention, than to just go into a disorganized situation like what you would foist on the people if you just ask them to be picking the forms from the 14th. They have been on this. They've been on this for the past few days. They didn't even start it on the 14th. But you are talking about a party as big as APC. So it's going to take some time before all the stakeholders, all the interests will be able to come together to agree on some of these things.
We listened to Governor Hope Uzodinma yesterday, and he was saying that the APC doesn't have to zone. But the fact that the governors were at the villa yesterday, there were indications, there were fears that the arrangement was about, or the meeting was about what was happening within the party. And that it was the meeting with the president was supposed to quell certain things and perhaps provide direction as the party was going to go into its convention. That didn't happen yesterday. The president has traveled. He's not expected back until Saturday. And people are wondering what will happen, before that time. Do you have any inkling as to how it is currently being arranged, or what arrangements are being put in place, or if things are still on course within the Secretariat of the APC, since you said that the information is available at the Secretariat?
Thank you very much. The president is the national leader of the party. And, it's just normal that the party would look up to him for direction in this kind of a thing, especially when you have contending interests in the party. Except for the youth pressure group within the party, that their interest is just to have a smooth running APC. You have some other political gladiators within the party who have one interest or the other. So that's why some of these processes are taking this long to be able to resolve. So I'm very sure they will be communicating with the president. they do not have to wait until the president returns on Saturday. They will be communicating with the president to know his thinking about some of these things, and also tell the president about what they are thinking about it. So I'm very sure we may not have to wait that long before we find solutions to some of these issues.
Do you have fears that the date, February 26th, could be moved again?
I honestly do not like to play to fears. You know, personally, I know, I mean, I'm confident that with the right people in the right positions, you know, I mean, whatever time we have to do any activity, we can get it done.
So but you want this done by February 26th?
Definitely.
You don't want the date moved?
No.
Despite the fears that you have? I mean, you say you don't want to pander to fears.
We know this is part of their plan, right? Like we've been saying for months now. I mean, if they had any iota of honesty, you know, sense of responsibility, you would have expected them to try to prove us wrong. I mean, the whole world can bear us witness that we've been on this. The young people in the party have been on this for months now. And these dates have been moved from December to January and now to February 26th. They finally came out to say February 26th. Today is the 16th. 10 days to... We have not, you know, started the sale of form. I mean, he did say something about he was at the party secretariat and he cited the form. The schedule does not include citing of form. It says sales of form. Have they started it? No.
Let's quickly flip this to Lagos. I hear my colleagues have questions for you.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Quite interesting conversation, I must say, because, I mean, clearly the schedule does not say, okay, let me just adjust that right now. Okay, that's sorted. So, clearly interesting conversation, I must say, but let me take this to Mr. Fowle and ask, so the sale of forms have not begun, and there's been no messaging to the party members that this is why we've not started it. I mean, because communication is very, very important when you've given a schedule and you're meant to stick by it, but there's been no communication. And there are fears that this might be a ploy to extend, you know, the tenure, in quote, of the chairman of the caretaker committee and others. Is there any universe, is there any possibility that that would happen? And would that be fine by you? That's for Mr. Fanwo.
Did you hear him?
No.
Can you hear me, Mr. Fanwo?
Could you kindly repeat your question?
Okay, I'm not even sure if...
Question.
Okay, good. So the question is simple. There are fears that this might be a ploy to extend the tenure of the chairman of a caretaker committee. And I'm asking, is there any possibility, is there any, you know, alternate universe that this happens? And would you be fine by that, the extension of his tenure?
Yeah, I don't have any reason to doubt the caretaker extraordinary convention planning committee of the party because of their antecedents. They set their agenda from the beginning, and they've been able to achieve most of the agenda. Think about the membership drive of the party, taking the party to 41 million member party. Think about the reconciliation of the party. Think about the congresses from the ward to the state, to the local government and to the state, and now setting the stage for the national convention. So I have no reason to doubt the integrity of the CCPC. Having said that, I think the party is more interested in having a very successful convention. They fixed February 26th. Let us give them the benefit of the doubt and wait and see what will happen. As a very loyal party member, I would rather be comfortable with a convention that is successful.
Well, Mr. Fanwo, I mean, do you know when the sale of forms will begin?
I think that would depend largely on the decision of the party on whether there will be zoning or not. That's going to guide the aspirants in deciding on when they will be picking their forms from the National Secretariat.
Isn't that saying already from, let me take this to Mr. Aldo, isn't that already saying with the schedule that you both have referenced seems to be operating in breach? If the sale of forms to begin on the 14th and it has not begun, what's the assurance we have that we're going to have the committee's list released on the 15th, on the 19th as promised?
All right. So the very issue we are facing now are are some of the things we have been crying about. But I understand something that, like we have always said, we are in this because of the quality of people we have in partisan politics. Whether we like it or not, to move this country to where it should be, that needs to change. The professionals, the technocrats, the people who know how to get organization moving. We have them in abundance in the private sector. We've come to a point where they need to embrace partisan politics and come in. That's exactly what we're trying to do with APC Rebed. Make the party attractive for best of minds to come in, because we find out that the expectation of people who don't have much to give is so low that they take anything thrown at them. So for people who actually know what they ask for, what they deserve, you are seen as a troublemaker. I do not think I need anybody to let me know that a system has failed. If 40% down the process, you haven't even achieved 5% of what you set out to achieve. I mean, even if it's a project where your indices, how do you measure? You can't put out a schedule and fail the same schedule and expect me to trust you.
All right.
It's bad enough that you push this convention to 26. Start the sales of form. And I have just said it. There are 42 positions that do not require zoning. I am confident that there will be zoning. Because of the way the country is, there has to be zoning. Any politician knows it.
Okay,
Any politician in APC knows it. What they are probably trying to sort now is who gets what. Zoning, it will happen. But then again, let's even put aside the position that deserves zoning. There are 42 positions that will be determined at the convention. If they were smart enough, they would have started the sales of those positions so as to give hope to people that they are actually honest and sincere about what they want to do. But of course, not only are they incompetent, they are insensitive, they are evil, and they don't mean well. And like my brother said earlier, they don't mind running down this party and destroying this party for personal gain.
Okay, Mr. Aldo,
I here to tell them that this is our party.
We're running out of time.
Let them do that.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Fowle. Mr. Fowle, you respond to that, but in addition to your response to what he said, could you also, because part of the accusation we see against the Buni-led team is that they accuse him, that's the party legal department now, of stoking fire in Kano by writing the High Court saying that they recognize the Shekarau faction. Can you say whether that is true or not?
I am not aware of that. And I cannot even hold brief for the CCPC. I think they will be able to do that through the National Secretary of the party.
Okay, so could you respond to what he said about their positions on the sale of forms that are not being zoned? Why can't they start selling forms to make it easier for everybody?
Yeah, I can understand. I can understand his concerns. It's not completely misplaced. When you talk about the chairman of the CCPC at the moment, who is Governor Mimalabuni, you would see that he's an experienced party manager, a former national secretary of the party, and that National Working Committee led the party into strings of successes since 2015 through 2019. And when you look at what he has achieved in the party, which I've read out before now, then you will know that to say such a person is incompetent or insincere with the progress of a party is not stating the obvious. Let me state this. There was a timetable for this convention. And, the timetable have been religiously followed. I think the only thing we are having issue with is the sale of forms. If you are saying they should sell to 42 that will not be zoned, then it means you are creating a gap. It is better you resolve the issue and everybody will go and pick a form at the appropriate time. I'm very sure the party is going to communicate that to members of the party in the next few hours, because we told them yesterday, we asked them questions, and they told us that they were only waiting for the meeting they were to hold with the president so that they will be able to communicate with party members. Now that the president is out of the country and they are still having their meetings and this kind of horse trading, so to say, then you would know that in the next few hours they will come out to address party members as to how all of those things will go. That's not enough ground for anybody to doubt the CCPC that has done so much for the party.
Well, gentlemen, we're totally out of time now. We'd really love to take our meal. So we have to say we'll wait and see just how events eventually pan out, whether or not, you know, the sale of forms will begin, even though it's going to be coming late, and whether the subcommittee's list will be released on Friday as scheduled, and what else, you know, is expected on the list of schedule for the before the APC convention. But we certainly will call you back as events evolve from your party. In the meantime, we say we wish you well. So thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Relief this morning. Mr. Kingsley Fanwo is the Commissioner for Information, Kogi State, and Aliyu Audu is the convener, APC Rebirth Movement. And they've been speaking to us here in our Abuja studios. Let's quickly see if you can take a few of your meals. Adebayo Adeniro is talking about the Abba Kyari case. Says the fact is that people in Nigeria have lost confidence in the police. It was the same maltreatment by the police that led to the NSAS protest. The processes of the police should be vetted, overhauled, and those found wanting should be investigated promptly and stripped of their powers which have corrupted them.
Ofesu says, although the law is not an end, but a means to an end, it must be applied quickly and fully in Abba Kyari's case because there is hard evidence, sad, that drug cases are surging because the wheels of justice in our country are extremely and disturbingly slow. This must change.
Take a look at Yari Law's tweet. Says the case of Abba Kyari is a huge embarrassment for Nigeria. If proved, Nigeria's police force will continue to be seen as an enabler of criminality, and that will further damage the reputation of the force as well as increase the level of distrust from the public.
Famous is looking forward. Abba Kyari is a senior police officer. If nothing is seen to be done right, remember the junior officers are watching. We need a police service of integrity.
Enough said, as we normally would say. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Yusuf.
We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Kyari.
Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
I'm Chamberlain Oso. Goodbye.